people have to do this job. It's an important job, but we don't want to burn everybody out with the demands.
Who pours into you now? Do you get that from somewhere?
Receiving help is not a sign of weakness, and it's just a way for someone else to show you love. Like when you offer to help people, it's because you love them. When they offer to help you, it's for the same reason.
What advice do you have for other professionals who may be feeling overwhelmed or burnt out in their careers right now?
And after I do that, I feel so good, So the cornerstone of my self-care when I was going through burnout was literally just
Dr. Nikia Smith is joining me today. Welcome, Nikia. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I saw that you made a post recently saying that it's revival season. Why revival?
I was looking for the correct word that really like resonated with me. I feel like revival is very close to rebirth, but it just feels more intentional and more powerful. This is the season where I'm going to be very intentional about myself, what I desire, and making sure that my actions align with that. And I just feel like it's going to be a very powerful movement for me.
Okay, so do you feel like this is a revival season for you or for your community or for humanity or for the women that you're speaking to?
Well, it's definitely for me, and I do feel like it's for the community. I hope it's for humanity, but I very strongly believe that when you invest in yourself and making your life better, that it radiates outwards to those around you and it continues its effect. So I'm hoping that by me living in a revival season, it directly affects those around me and it makes its outward appearance to the rest of the world. I do think that the world needs a revival season, so I do hope that it becomes a revival for everybody.
Okay, so by being it, then you're going to attract it and you're speaking out what you want to attract.
Yes, I love it.
Like that. Okay. So you're a doctor now who is currently practicing, and now you're also empowering women to pursue a fulfilling life that sets their soul on fire. How did that
Yes.
journey unfold for you?
So that journey unfolded for me. It was a very personal journey. I, said I wanted to be a doctor since I was 8 years old. And, I used my perseverance and my grit to make it happen. But after becoming a doctor, I was just like, oh, arrival fallacy big time. They kept telling us along the way, it will get better as you get to each new step. And so you're hoping that once you finally arrive and reach that pinnacle, your goal, that it is the end all be all. But as we get deeper into these journeys, we know that the goal, the end is not the result. It's like the journey is what you're supposed to be enjoying. So I spent all these early points of my life moving through the journey with my eyes only on the goal and realizing that once you hit the goal, it wasn't all I thought it would be. And then I definitely was burnt out. And I really enjoyed your podcast episode with Tracy. She was speaking to who I was 3 or 4 years ago. I was super burnt, misaligned, unsure, unaware. And it was just really hard to kind of climb out and figure out where to start. Um, and like she said, you think everybody around you is thriving and happy. So you think maybe you're the only one that's kind of not happy in the situation. And you do have a career where people are like, well, why wouldn't you be happy being a doctor? So you kind of feel a little bit of shame and guilt, like, why am I not happy just being a doctor? But at the end of the day, I had to come to the realization that like parts of it was aligned. Like I do identify as a healer and an educator, and I do want to care for people, but I also want to care for people and help people in a different capacity or an additional capacity.
Have you pinpointed what makes you feel not fulfilled or burnt
Yeah.
out when you are practicing?
I have, and for a while I thought it's a component of burnout, but a few years back an article came out and it was about moral injury. And moral injury is about how the system is keeping you in that space. So how they frame the healthcare system is not optimal for doctors to practice the way they want to practice and take the best care of their patients at time. And that causes a lot of inner turmoil and stress, and that builds upon the burnout. And so I do know that part of it is the system and how everything is going, and part of it is me and how I put so much into it, and it can be very draining.
And what you're doing now, it fulfills you while you're still practicing.
It does fulfill me while I'm still practicing. I always love to practice. Like I love interacting with my patients and I love interacting with my team, like my staff, my team, my coworkers. So I do always love the interaction with people and talking to people. And with the patients, I do love taking care of them. It's a very vulnerable moment when you're going to have surgery. It's very full of doubt and confusion and lack of control, and people are at their most vulnerable. And I love taking care of people at that time and being there for them and offering them support and letting them know that they're in good hands. But I am tired of looking around at my colleagues and we're all like not taking care of ourselves, right? So we're pouring everything into our patients and we're whatever's left is left for us and for our families. And so I'm like, well, I still want to pour into my patients, but I also want to pour into each other so that we can be energized and rejuvenated to do these jobs. People have to do this job. It's an important job, but we don't want to burn everybody out with the demands.
I'm really happy that you mentioned that because I had this thought this morning about what I do and what you're doing, and a lot of entrepreneurs online are doing, and how we're pouring into the world and everyone basically. And how I feel like it almost puts this expectation out there for the people in our lives because they're also watching us,
Mhm.
that they almost want or expect us to pour into them like that in quote real life, in when in person to person contact. And so who pours into you now? Do you get that from somewhere?
Yeah, and so I think initially I wasn't getting it or I wasn't getting as much of it as I needed. And I think it was because the assumption that I was moving through and just saying everything was okay, that people didn't think I needed anything. So
Mhm.
part of my journey has been, being more open about asking for help or saying that things aren't really okay. But I have found that since I've started this journey, and just pouring myself out there, people are like reactively pouring into me, like out of the blue, like, I mean, I always, friends and family, but like out of the blue, I'll send an email and then 2 days later, people will be like, how are you doing? And so I'm getting more unsolicited, how are you doing and how are things going messages. And I really do enjoy that we are now doing that more because I do feel like the assumption is that if people are posting or whatever, that they're okay. But I'm like, no, just check on people. If you're thinking of them, just check on them, period, no matter what they've posted. And so I think that me doing that has definitely come back to me, and I'm really appreciative of that because I don't think I was getting it before, but I also wasn't putting out that energy that I needed it.
Yes. Okay, yes. This is something I'm struggling with personally, is what about receiving it? And I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse or not, but this is something I've struggled with for a while. It's like I can and I will get that help or that those people reaching out, but I'm just like, I'm good. I don't know if it's like an independent thing or a pride thing or, but it's difficult for me to receive it. And I think a lot of other people have that as well.
Yes, women especially. We are and they post about that. I'm like, are you really good? Because people always used to ask me, are you okay? Are you good? And I'm like, yes. The answer is always yes, no matter if I'm good or not. And
Mhm.
then it's really hard and it's definitely a lot of mindset work. And I read some book and I really wish I could remember the name of which book it was because I've been going through so many. But she had said, like, if you say no to someone offering to help you, you're denying them an opportunity to show you love, and that has stuck with me. And so, although it's been harder for me to like literally be like, can you help me do this? I've decided that like the first step, because we take baby steps like atomic habits, just put the shoes by the door. So it's like if people ask me something, I might say no. Like, do you need something? I'm like, no. And then if they ask me again, I'll be like, okay, sure. Like I was like, okay, I can't ask for help just yet. But I think that just not saying no is like an easy first step, or the easiest first step that I can take. So that's kind of like how I'm baby stepping it. But yeah, it's really hard. And I think it becomes it's like societal expectations. It's kind of ingrained in us to be like this superwoman and to always like have everything handled. And it's really, really hard for us to unlearn that and see that receiving help is not a sign of weakness. And it's just a way for someone else to show you love. Like when you offer to help people, it's because you love them. And so when they offer to help you, it's for the same reason.
So we're basically hurting the other person by not
Mhm.
letting them help us, and we help them by letting them help us.
Yes, we help them by letting them help us, and we let them love us by letting them help us. And so it's still hard, but sometimes I have to think about it like, okay, it's not about me. This is about them. They want to help me to show me that they love me. So it's not about me not being able to do it, which is my instinct. Like, no, I can handle it. I got it. But that's kind of something I'm also working on, but I know a lot of women struggle with that.
Mhm. You focus on helping women of color.
Mhm.
Why not all women or women and men?
So I focus on helping women of color just because it's my perspective, it's my experience. So I speak to my experience and my journey. If it speaks to anybody else, I'm more than welcome, in receiving. I do have some, white women that resonate with my messages and that I speak with, and I have no problem with that. But I just want people to know that my perspective is my perspective, and that's what I'm going to be speaking to, so that they know what to expect when they step into my spaces, right? So my spaces are created to let women of color feel comfortable and feel safe. And if you
Mm.
feel safe in that space, you're welcome. But that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, I completely understand. I remember when I first started and I was helping women, in a certain age range with
Mhm.
their skin. So I was kind of limiting, and I would get messages and from men and who were really struggling with their skin, and why don't you help men? And it just kind of tugged at my heart. I'm like, oh man. But I was trying to help the person that I was because
Yes.
that's who I knew best.
And they say if you speak to everybody, you speak to nobody. But if you're speaking to somebody and somebody else that's not in your niche or your target resonates, then that's great. So again, I love all people. And I have retreats, and my facilitator is a white woman, but she's comfortable in the space, and she knew what it was. I'm like, it's gonna be mostly Black women, but there could be other women. And I have Indian women, I have whoever wants to come. But my facilitator is a white woman, and she's comfortable in the space. And I'm like, as long as we're comfortable in the space, then that's fine. We're going to be sharing our stories. But I can realize that it can be uncomfortable for some people to hear the stories that of our experiences. And so that's just what I wanted to set it up. Like, we will safely share. And if you're uncomfortable by it, I'm sorry, but we're not going to mute our experience for that. And that's just for anybody. Like, I'm tired of muting my experience to make people feel more comfortable. So I like no longer shrinking this year. So I'm just going to share what it is, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And if people do take things personally, it's something that they need to kind of look at within. At least this
Mhm.
is what I've, seen. And
Yeah.
it's something that yeah, inside of them, if they're triggered, then they could reflect on and learn from.
Yeah.
How do you believe the experiences at your retreats contribute to the overall well-being and fulfillment of female physicians of color?
It's curated just for that. So like I said, I have a facilitator, and I worked with her personally, and she's a trauma-informed therapist, and she specializes in mindfulness, perfectionism, coping mechanisms. And she speaks to a lot of physicians in general. So she is trained to work with physicians and our type of stressors in daily life. And we just I worked with her personally, and it was a big breakthrough for me because before I even worked with her, in the capacity that we worked, wasn't private one-on-ones, but it was a group setting about trauma. And I wasn't even willing to admit that my experience had been traumatic. And so it's a journey of self-awareness and um, and kind of just coming to the realization that although these things happen to you and they may be traumatic and you may have moved through them, it's not necessarily okay. And that you can address that and get your feelings out. And like I said, when I was going through my journey, I felt like I was the only one feeling it because everybody else seemed to be having it together. They were still functioning. When I took a step back and looked at myself in the mirror, I was also seeming to have everything together and functioning and being okay. So it wasn't until I started sharing my story that I realized that other people were also unhappy in certain capacities, and that, just sharing my story gave them permission to really decide, like, oh, this is kind of messed up, or I don't like this. Let me make a change. And I know we don't seek permission, but sometimes we need it to let our guard down. to know that we're not the only one, to know that we're not like exaggerating or kind of, having, unrational feelings. So the retreats are designed based on my experiences and the experiences of my friends that I talk to regularly. I get their feedback on what they're struggling with, and then we curate the agenda for that. And then the retreat is also about mind and body as well. So we are at a wellness resort that offers many other modalities and sound bowls and yoga and Reiki. And so we do get into other modalities to connect it all together because we don't want to just sit in a room and learn about it. We want to, embody it and become more grounded and mindful as we leave the retreats.
The retreat sounds amazing. If you're hearing this now, it probably already happened by the time this comes out, but I'm sure you'll have another one.
Yeah, I'll keep pushing. So just check the website and I'll keep scheduling them. But yeah, it's important to like Tracy said, again, I really resonated with that one because I was definitely burnt out. But it's important, like we can intellectualize things and talk about them all we want and, even just acknowledge it and address it. But if we don't actually do something physically with our body to embody it and to, keep that or release it or keep it, like, release what we want to release and embody what we want to embody, we're going to just keep making those same decisions and living in that same cycle. So I do think it's important to learn and then to also take action.
Let's talk about the community aspect that comes
Mhm.
with the retreat. Can you discuss the importance of community and connection in fostering resilience and well-being, especially for women in professional settings?
Yes. I do find that women, especially in professional settings and even like, entrepreneurship and, people are like, oh, what's professional mean? I'm like, professional means you work in a professional setting and it's not a defined box. Like entrepreneurs feel the burn as much as, C-level executives, physicians, and lawyers. You are grinding in those hours. It feels very isolating. It's very emotionally labile. Like some days you wake up, you're like, yeah, I'm on top of the world. I'm about to crush it. My offer is great. I'm feeling good about it. And then even a few hours later, you can be like, why am I doing this? What is happening here? Should I just give it up, burn it all, and walk away? You're just like, forget it. So it's very emotionally labile. It's very isolating. In certain spaces, like when you get to certain spaces and certain levels, you're very isolated. And it's important to know that you're not alone and that you have a community that you can reach out to for support and empowerment. And sometimes you don't have to even ask, but sometimes just being in the space is helpful. As I've transitioned, well, not transitioned, but as I've added being an entrepreneur to my resume and I've been putting myself in these different spaces, I find that just being there is very impactful. Like just listening to what other people are saying, seeing how far they've gone. You see people that are ahead of you and you're like, wow, she did it. And it's really like tangible and possible. And you see people behind you and you're like, wow, I really have grown. And I think it's really common for us to forget how far we've come because we're not where we want to be yet. And so we get kind of lost in that. It's like, well, I'm not really here yet. But when you see somebody that's behind you asking a question and you know the answer to it and you have the experience, you're like, wow, I have really grown. And being in that space just allows you to help and to learn and to feel more connected. And like you said, the hierarchy of needs, we have to have belonging and connection. And it's super important before you can get to any of those other levels. It's really the third tier. And I think that before COVID, it was a little better, but then during COVID, it like really regressed as far as connecting and connecting deeply. I think socials have made people feel connected, but you're not really connected. Just watching someone's life is not being connected to them. And so that's why I'm like, okay, we have to be more engaging, like literally like, oh, that looks great. I mean, it doesn't take a lot, but just saying like, oh, that looks fun, like just actually comment and try to start a conversation with people. So that is why I think community is so important.
Yes, putting yourself in the energy of all the people physically, your body versus online is just a world of a difference and feeling the other people. And like you said, it gives you that perspective of how far you've come and what's also possible for you.
Yeah, I always forget how far I've come. And then I'm like, oh, because we're so hard on ourselves. We're like, well, I thought I would be here by the end of the year, but I'm not there. But you're not where you started. And so we have to just keep persisting. And I know for me, I put really, really high and sometimes unrealistic expectations on myself. And then I beat myself up for not meeting them. And that is something that I've had to work through, and contributed to my burnout. Like that was just me contributing to my own burnout by putting such high expectations and almost unreasonable in some aspects. So just take a
Mhm.
step back and be like, well, I made this a really high expectation. I knew it was leaping for the moon and I have landed in the stars, and that's good. That's
Oh,
good.
yeah. I did the same thing, and it got to the point where, yeah, I would just not feel good about myself anymore, so I stopped setting goals, but that's not very productive either.
Yeah.
You want to set something, and you wanna celebrate the small wins along the way, and having that community is such a great way to have that support system and those people kind of cheering you on and celebrating with you.
hmm And it's great to celebrate other people too. It feels good to hear about other people's wins, and it feels good to share yours in a space where you don't feel like people will judge you about it. It's
Mm,
like, oh, you feel people like, oh, so what? That's nothing. But they actually like are really happy for you. We just judge ourselves way more than other people judge us. And so we already feel like, there's no point, but there really is a point.
mhm. Yes, that's another part of it is you don't want to just share your wins with everyone
Mhm.
because you don't know who is actually celebrating you.
Yeah.
I screenshotted something that I saw that you had posted. If you are not inspired by your friendships, you don't have a circle, you have a cage. And
Yeah.
that just reminded me of, have you heard about like the crab bucket?
Yeah, and like how they like scurry out on top of each other. Oh, that's a really good image. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so that's how, some friend groups might be like that, and, you're the crab escaping and they pull you back down into the bucket. Yeah, you want to make sure that your circle and your community is strong in themselves so they don't feel smaller, insecure around you. They can also build you up, and it's authentic, and yeah, I think that that's so important, knowing the people and their heart in your community.
Yeah, it's very important. And I find that, yeah, so it's like people will bring you down, and then also some people will put themselves like in that crowd. They're like the strongest crab in the bucket. So they don't want to stay in the bucket because they know they're on the top. They won't escape it and go to the next bucket where they could be the bottom. And it's really uncomfortable. And I think I mentioned that reason. Like I've just now started putting myself in rooms where I'm like the floor and not the ceiling. Not that I necessarily placed myself in rooms where I'm the ceiling, but eventually if you stay in the same room, you're gonna be the ceiling. And so I'm like, oh crap, like it's uncomfortable, but you learn a lot by being the floor. And I'm like, I'm not even talking, I'm just listening to conversations and seeing how people are moving. And it's
Mhm,
just like, wow. Like, so you have to sometimes free yourself from that cage and go somewhere else, be inspired. And yeah, don't be the crab on top of the barrel. Get out, like move to another barrel and work your way back up again. It's fun. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it.
right. Another analogy that comes to mind, and then we can move away from the animals. But a big fish in a small pond,
Mhm,
and then you become the small fish in the big pond.
mhm.
But yeah, I mean, becoming comfortable being uncomfortable is
Yeah,
just key. Yeah.
it's very key. It's very hard, but it's important to moving on and to not staying in that same space, that comfort zone.
hmm What advice do you have for other professionals who may be feeling overwhelmed or burnt out in their careers right now?
I do want to tell them that trying to gain more control over your life and your schedule does not prevent you from being burnt out. And that's from personal experience. I do think a lot of professionals have a tendency to try to schedule certain things like, okay, I'm burnt out, so I'm going to schedule this or do that. And that does not really help. And like Tracy said, there's a point where you can schedule rest and you can schedule vacations, but it does not help. And you'll go on vacation, you might feel okay, and then as soon as you get back, like you'll have that same level of exhaustion because the energy is off and you're not aligned. Like so the rest is not enough. So my advice is to become really intentional. It's a very slow journey. People think that like, okay, I've decided and so tomorrow will be different. And it's not like that. You have to be really intentional. You have to do some inner work, reflect, and really become self-aware of to what you really want and try to start becoming more aligned. And as you do that, it slowly eases up. But I do want people to know that you can become burnt out on things that you enjoy, and you can become burnt out in other roles besides working. So people are like, oh, it's work, I'm burnt out from work. I'm like, you're burnt out from like your family life, like to caregiving, not necessarily at work, but like caregiving for your kids, for your parents, for your husband, even for a family friend, whoever you're caregiving for. So there is other ways that you can burn out, and you just need to be kind of aware of where you're spending all this energy and what is actually draining you before you just assume it's work and make changes there.
Mhm. So true. Everyone can get burnt out. There was something I heard, and I might butcher this, but
Mhm.
it had to do with if you have a job or a life that you need to take a vacation from, then you don't have a job. The job has you.
Yeah. That's what it feels like. And that's what it is. It's like people are like, I'm gonna go on vacation. I'm like, you're gonna come back, it's gonna be the same thing. You have to literally change your life. And it's not an easy process because you've been building this life for how long? Based on whatever thoughts and beliefs you've had. So it requires a lot of mindset shifts and new thoughts and beliefs to build a different life. And it's complicated and it takes work, but it's totally worth it. I mean, I'm only a few years into my journey, and I can tell you that my life, it's dramatically like way better. And I'm so excited for the continued growth. I know people who have said they've been on these journeys for 10 plus years. And I'm like, oh, I'm 3 years in. I can't wait to see what happens in 7 more years as far as, realizing what I really want and the capacity that I really have. I do think that traditional society kind of limits what you think your capacity is. And we're learning that it's not really true.
How do we create a life that feels fulfilling every day?
I think that the hard part is the expectation, right? To expect that the life that is fulfilling will feel good all the time and will feel good all the time every day is unreasonable because it's still life. But to make your life feel fulfilling every day, at the end of the day, you sit down and you said, wow, like all the decisions I made today really made me happy. I'm happy with the decisions I've made. And it's hard because I would sit down before and be like, I was not happy with any of these decisions that happened. I felt like I got, railroaded or manipulated or whatever, guilt tripped, whatever it is that you were feeling when you made a decision in the past, and it doesn't feel good. But now it's like, okay, I've made this decision for this reason. And so I'm happy with it. So I think that when you make decisions when you have that self-awareness of what you value and you make those decisions based on that, it becomes slowly and slowly more fulfilling. And then just finding a daily joy. I mean, I know life can be tough, but there's usually one moment of really deep and happy joy in your day. Somebody could have just said, hey girl, you look really cute today, and you're like, yeah, thank you, or whatever it was. Like, so just have gratitude and reflect on those moments that the small moments that bring you daily joy.
How do you know when a decision is being based off of what is going to fulfill you and based off of fear?
Mhm. And that's a hard one. And I'm something I'm still struggling with. But you have to, like, when you do this, the work and the self-awareness and the values, and you have your why, right? And so it's like sometimes I don't want to do something. But when I look at my big, big, big overall picture, and I'm like, what do I want to leave? Like, I want my legacy to be impacting and influencing as many women as possible to have a better life. And is that serviced by me not making this post today? And so, like, sometimes I don't feel like posting, or I don't feel like whatever going live, or don't feel like doing these things. But then I remember, like, okay, this isn't about you, it's about your why. And so just kind of do it. And I think that that's mostly the fear and the comfort of like, no, it's okay, like it's dragging you back down. But I think um that just at least knowing the why and knowing how you feel about the outcome of the decision will help direct you if it's fear, or if it's going to be fulfilling. Like, you can think of a decision, someone can ask you, hey, can you come speak at my retreat? And you can think about it and be like, oh, I should say no, that's going to be scary. I might be in a room with people that I don't know, they might not think my speech is good or whatever. But then when you think about your why, you're like, well, I really want to impact and help as many people as possible. This will put me in a new space where I can help new women. And so when you make that decision, you're like, okay, if I say no, it will be in fear. And if I say yes, it'll be fulfilling my why. And I know not all decisions are that deep. And so, but as you start to do more work, the deeper ones are going to be the more fearful ones, right? Like the easy ones, we don't get the fear around. It's the deep and hard decisions that you get that fear, because you know that that's going to put you either like closer to success. And that's going to be where you really feel that inkling to withdraw.
That's when it's going to push you and make you feel
Mhm.
uncomfortable, and your ego or your small self is going
Yeah.
to be like, no, stay here where it's safe.
Stay where it's safe. And people who are like, oh, I don't really have that in my life. And I'm like, well, that's something you need to reflect upon. If you're not really having decisions that you have to make that make you fearful, then you're not doing anything big enough that's worthy of that fear. So that just means you're making really small decisions that have no real impact. And that's, that's still rooted in your comfort zone. Like the ego is not challenged at all. They're like,
Right.
so
Yeah. That was such great advice. I just want to reiterate it. So you have your big goal, or you have your ideal reality that you're creating. And when you're going to make a decision, you ask yourself the question, is this moving me closer to that vision? If
Mhm.
it that makes it so simple, because if it's a yes, go forward. If it's a no, then you don't have to waste any more time or energy on it.
Yeah. But the fear will have you questioning everything. You're like, well,
Uh-huh.
and the fear is very powerful.
Yeah, I still question it, and I still have it every single day.
Yeah, and I had posted, I don't know if I posted yesterday. I was posting recently because people were like, "Oh, like how do you do that? Like how do you just put yourself out there? You're so courageous. You don't have fear." And I'm like, "Oh no, honey. I have a lot of fear." And I post like courage is not doing it fearlessly. Courage is doing it with the fear. And like I have fear all the time, but I just move forward because I just think about, is this going to help me impact women and reach more women? And I'm like, okay, yes, then let's do it. And so you have to just remember that and steadfast move at that. But yeah.
There's a really great acronym for fear, and hopefully you remember the last letter, because I don't. Otherwise, we can cut this out. But it's feel everything. And have
Oh,
you heard this before?
no, I
No.
don't think I know it. Sorry. I'm like, I'm gonna look it up though. I
I
will
want to say
definitely
run, but I don't think that's right.
everything and
I'm gonna have to look it up.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when you feel the fear, do it anyway, as they say.
Mhm,
You have created a really amazing brand and business, Forged in Fire. How
mhm.
do you envision the future of Forged in Fire and its impact on the well-being of women?
The impact, it's big. I mean, I'm a visionary, so I have a really big vision. But I hopefully will be impacting women to prioritize themselves without guilt and shame, and to invest more, time and energy into their wellness. And overall, I believe that women are the most powerful. We're the most powerful, and it's going to be amazing the things we do over the next few years. So I just want us to start taking care of ourselves now as we progress into our power. And the ways and the capacities and the channels I want to do it are a lot. So, but I started with the retreats because I needed the retreat in that moment. Like in that moment when I was recovering from my burnout, I'm like, I need to go to this resort and just do yoga and sleep in and do a burning and do intentions and do all this stuff and free all my chakras. And I had to do all that stuff. And that's just how it started. And so the journey was started very personally, but now that I have made connections and I'm hearing what people want and need, I'm just trying to provide them to the best of my capacity. So but yes, if you feel like you need, support, help, assistance, clarity, courage, a community, just a listening ear, that is just what I'm here for. And I just hope to expand it and just connect with as many women as I can personally and connecting with each other, which is why I wanted to build the community. It started out with women who I knew and I'm connected to, and I'm supporting them. And then at the retreats, they become connected to each other, and now they're supporting each other, and I love that. And I was like, I need a community because like we have to connect and support each other, and we're all we got, we're all we got, and we will look after each other to the best that we can, because women are better. I mean, we are better caretakers, we are better healers, we are better supporters, and when we're better together. So
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I've been to a couple of retreats myself, and the fact that that's how you're meeting the people for the first time in a space like that, it creates a special bond, and you do have a connection with them for the rest of your life, even if it's just staying up to date on their lives through, Facebook or Instagram, or you find your new best friend and you start a business together or
Mhm.
something. I've seen that happen. It's
Yeah.
just incredible what can come out of retreats. In fact, I'm also planning one coming up in May. We both have retreats coming up, and it's the first one
Oh,
I've ever
awesome.
done, but it's like they made such an impact in my life
Mhm.
that it's time to, show that to other people what's possible and bring more like-minded people together.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for your retreat. I'm excited for your first retreat. It's gonna be, or
I'm
it's gonna be
excited
like,
for you.
yeah, it's gonna be amazing.
And yeah, I'm excited to see. I wanted to go to your retreat.
But I'm gonna keep persisting, so we will be able to tag team and go to each other's retreats in the future. And I'm
That would be
excited.
amazing.
Mhm.
Okay, what are some practical steps or strategies that our listeners can implement to prioritize their own wellness and thrive in both their personal and professional lives?
Okay. So I'm trying to think about practicality, but the big thing for me as far as prioritizing wellness is that you have to kind of make your own definition of self-care and wellness, right? I mean, I love, don't get me wrong, I love aesthetics. I love facials and massages and stuff like that. But there's deeper self-care that needs to be done, and only you can define it for yourself. So I mean, you have to kind of tap into what really refreshes and rejuvenates and energizes you. And then that is the cornerstone of your self-care. Like mine is, I really like to read. I love audiobooks, I love podcasts, but I like to sit down with a physical book and a candle and like a coffee or tea and like sit for like an hour to an hour and a half and just read. And after I do that, I feel so good, So the cornerstone of my self-care when I was going through burnout was literally just creating the time to read and read every week and then read twice a week and like kind of building that in. And it really just depends on what you feel like. Going to get a massage and going to get a mani-pedi, like actually they don't energize me, and sometimes they actually drain me and they feel like more of a chore. So when you focus on those things that feel like they're a chore, they're not really helping you recover and they're not really providing you with self-care. So if you feel really energized and refreshed after getting a manicure, then great. But most people are like, ugh, like, oh, it's a whole hour, but it's like you go because you want your nails to look fine, but you don't go because you feel great about the experience once you're done. So I really want people to tap in and figure out what they can do or what they enjoy doing that really leaves them feeling their best self. For some people, it's like doing puzzles, doing yoga, going on a walk, and it can just be simply resting. I don't like it to be sleeping because sleep is not self-care. Sleep is necessity. Like it's essential. So people are like, oh, I just take a nap. I'm like, napping is not your self-care. That's part of your bodily functioning. Like you can rest and like, lay down and think and meditate or whatever. But like sleeping is not like, oh, I do that for myself. Like you have to do that. You have to sleep, you have to eat. Like don't act like that's something additional or special.
Mhm. It
That
doesn't
you do
sound.
for yourself. People are like, yeah. I was like, no, no, that's not self-care. That is literally self-maintenance. That is life. That is living. So I
Mhm.
want people to really take the time and sometimes go back into their childhood. Like what do they do that was most joyful or most fun? I have a friend, a really good friend who really enjoys doing Legos, and she has all these Legos, like different ones in there. They look really cool. But like once you get into that groove, you're in the flow state, like you're focused and you're just kind of like moving through. That's what you want to find for yourself. And that's kind of the cornerstone of your self-care. And then you can kind of build out from there. But don't be relegated to what society tells you self-care is.
That's so good. Yes. I'm thinking of all the different ideas that I like. What do I do for self-care?
Oh
Because
yeah, people plants, like I can't get into that, but people are lost in like gardening and plant care for like an hour. Like if you kind of get lost in it, then that's a really good place to start.
yes, that's it.
Baking, like whatever, it could be anything. But like I mean, I don't like cooking, I don't like cleaning, but people get lost in baking or cooking or, plants or journaling or puzzles or just going on a long walk, hiking, like anything that kind of just takes you away should be like the starting point, and then you should work out from there.
Right. Yeah. Things that feel good to your soul that you're not doing because you have to do it.
Yep.
I have one final question for you.
Mhm.
What is your number one health tip? Whether it's mindset, diet, and nutrition, physical, emotional, just the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
So this is something that I saw on my journey, and it's just like a part, like a cornerstone for me. So wellness is engagement, not withdrawal. And that's kind of like how I started. Right? I'm like, okay, retreats and community, like this is it. I know that the inkling is to withdraw and to be like, I have to work on myself, I have to go inward, and you do, but like that is not how you're gonna, optimize your wellness, optimize your life, thrive, and be flourishing. It's not alone, and it's just to recognize that, you're not alone, and the engagement helps you realize that. So just try to engage with somebody, your friends, some new people, whoever it is you feel comfortable talking to, a therapist, a coach, me, somebody on the, slide into our DMs, like engage with somebody and you will be on your path to wellness.
Fantastic. Where can people find more from you?
So I have my website, which is www.sheisfireforged.com. It is still in development. I do post on Instagram almost daily, and I'm very active on Instagram. And I do also have a Facebook and they're both at She is Fire Forged. So that will be the best places to engage with me on Facebook and Instagram. But you can also go on the website and email me, and I will email you back because I love talking with people.
Perfect. All of that is in the description, of course.
Mhm.
Thank you, Dr. Nikia. And if you are not subscribed yet and you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you do to see more amazing guests like Dr. Nikia. And I will see you next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.